Do you think we can trust Ishmael? She asked, her voice softened by the distance in her gaze. Enzo leaned against the opposite wall, his dark brows drawn together, reflecting the weight of her question. Trust is a tricky thing in our line of work, he replied, watching her silhouette, every curve illuminated by the fading light. He paused, allowing silence to stretch between them, thick with unspoken words. But can we really afford to doubt him now? The air in the room shifted, charged with unacknowledged tension. Tonja turned to look at him, and the intensity of his gaze sent a shiver down her spine. She remembered their last case together, the sweat, the adrenaline, and the way his hand had brushed against hers when they found that last piece of evidence. He brought me into this mess. I can't help but feel. Responsible? Enzo offered, stepping closer, his voice low, wrapped around her like velvet. You're not the one pulling the strings. You're the one trying to untangle them. With each step he took, Tanja felt her heart beat faster, a roller coaster of emotions swirling within her: fear, resentment, longing. They were a team, both detectives and something else unspoken, an undeniable magnetic pull drawing them together, even when the mission at hand demanded focus. But your instincts about him matter too, she argued, crossing her arms, though a trembling fragility stole through her resolve. He's dangerous, Enzo. I can feel it. Or maybe he's just misunderstood, he posited gently, those deep-set eyes searching hers. Sometimes danger is alluring, even when we know better. Tanja's breath hitched, their proximity igniting a fire in the pit of her stomach. With a slight tilt of her head, she broke eye contact. We can't get distracted by. But she was cut off as he stepped even closer, the softness in his demeanor contrasting sharply with the tension crackling in the air. Distracted by what? The truth of how we feel. The vulnerability in his voice pierced her defenses. She wanted to argue, to push back, but the way he looked at her, soft yet intense, made her pulse quicken. Why now? She breathed, torn between longing and fear. Because it's never stopped being there. Enzo's hand found her arm, his thumb brushing the skin with an electrifying slowness that filled her senses with warmth. The world outside faded into insignificance. It was just them, existing in this moment. With a small breath, Tanja leaned into his touch, allowing her defenses to crumble as she searched his expression for any sign of pretense. But all she saw was deep honesty etched in the lines of his face, and she felt herself being pulled closer. Enzo, she began, but he shook his head, pressing a finger gently to her lips. Despite the firm resolve of their lives as detectives, amidst chaos, there was undeniable tension rising like the tide, steadily filling the space around them with warmth and possibility. There was hesitance lingering in that brief touch, a silent agreement to cross the threshold. She felt drawn, fear battling attraction. The balance teetered on an edge of suspense. But before she could voice her next thought, Enzo closed the distance. His lips met hers, tentative at first, their breaths mingling in the charged silence. As they melted into one another, it deepened, soft and unhurried, yet insatiable like a promise long overdue. Time fell away, space became irrelevant as the kiss unraveled all the complications of their situation, simplifying it to this singular moment of connection. Every lingering doubt, every worry about the mission faded into obscurity, caught in the unmistakable rawness that anchored them together. And then, just as quickly as it began, it ended. They pulled apart, their breaths mingling in the stillness, chests heaving as they returned to the realities of their lives. What was that? Tanja asked softly, eyes wide and searching, the heartbeat of their unspoken agreement echoing through the silence. Enzo exhaled deeply, wiping the back of his hand across his mouth, as if trying to erase the moment. A distraction, maybe, he murmured, a flicker of regret crossing his features. Yet his eyes glimmered with a hint of mischief, one we shouldn't ignore. As Tanja absorbed his words, the weight of the looming investigation settled back onto her shoulders, but their resolve solidified. Whatever lay ahead, both in their mission and in their hearts, she would face it head-on. Scene 84. The Cutthroat Battle. In the dim light of the abandoned warehouse, shadows danced like phantoms on the walls, a world hushed yet brimming with unspoken tension. Tonja Coleman stood at the edge of a shattered window, her breath shallow, the tang of salt and rust mingling in the air. The cool breeze brushed against her skin, sparking a familiar electric thrill. Why here? She pondered, glancing at Ishmael Devereaux as he paced like a caged animal, their latest endeavor ambered in the flickering, deserted light. Ishmael's brow furrowed, his jaw tight. The way he moved, resembling a lion poised to pounce, made her heart race. There was hunger there, a longing intertwined with a silent rage. The weight of secrets loomed between them, leaving the space thick with unexpressed fears and desire. She used to inhabit this tension with a certain ease. Now it felt like a tightening noose. "They're coming," Ishmael snapped, his blue eyes shifting toward the door like an arrow ready to release. "You know that, don't you?" Tonja crossed her arms, challenging. "You set this whole thing in motion. Did you forget?" The accusation dripped lightly, her tone inviting debate, yet the grip of uncertainty pressed down on her heart. "You think I'll let them rip us apart?" The silence crackled, and without the need for words, a storm brewed. Moments hung in the charged air, aching for release. Their gazes locked, magnetized by shared history, rising anticipation, and something deeper, a dance of vulnerability and temptation. Before she knew it, Ishmael lunged toward her, his intensity folding her into the moment. "What are you willing to risk, Tonja?" His voice was low, dangerous, laced with something that thrummed against her skin. The air electrified, sparking memories of another time, another place, where passion exploded on the brink of danger. "You should know by now," she breathed, stepping closer, the fragrance of cedar on his jacket intoxicating. "I'll risk it all." Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside, muffled yet unmistakable. Ishmael's gaze darted to the door, the animalistic ferocity beneath the composed surface almost palpable. "They're here." "Then let's make this count," she replied, adrenaline coursing through her veins, igniting her superb instincts. She didn't need to hesitate. She could feel the electric chemistry intensifying. It swirled like a storm gathering strength, each heartbeat drowning out the impending chaos. There would be no turning back. The door burst open with a deafening crash, revealing three men obscured by shadows, their sinister intentions toward the two of them glaringly obvious. Tanja's instincts kicked in, drawing upon her training as she pivoted towards the closest assailant. She ducked, dodging the wild swing of a fist, countering with her own rippling strength. She felt the satisfaction of connection as her fist met jaw, their bodies colliding with an echoing thud. In the flurry of movement, amidst the chaos, Tonja felt Ishmael by her side, right where he belonged. Ducking low, he swept the legs of another opponent, sending him sprawling as their eyes met in a fraction of a breath, unspoken acknowledgement crackling between them. As the third man charged, Tonja sensed the moment, an entire universe folded into a single breath. They moved as one. It was beautiful, primal. Tonja grasped the man's wrist, twisting with elegant ferocity, her thoughts a simmering whisper of fighting and connection, each punch landing like an unyielding truth. She held him firm, breathing in the clash of scents, sweat, adrenaline, and the scent of fear. "Tonja, behind you!" Ishmael shouted as he tackled the third assailant, bringing their bodies into a tumbling brawl. As she pivoted, a glimmer of ruby caught her gaze, a blade. A knife glistened under the feeble warehouse lights. The world slowed, instinct flooding her senses as she reached for the weapon, fingers sliding against its cold steel. A surge of battle and grace intertwined, yielding a moment suspended between life and death. The glint of the weapon served as a metaphor for their volatile relationship, sharp and unyielding. "Now's not the time to get lost in your head," Ishmael shouted, deflecting an incoming strike with a swift, calculated maneuver. Their bond tested like the blade now poised dangerously close. "Let's finish this together." Tonja felt a warmth in her chest, a connection forged in combat and need, breathing life into the stakes of their moment. She lunged, plunging the knife into the air as they mounted their final assault, fighting side by side. "After tonight, we talk," Ishmael promised, voice barely above a whisper, eyes locking on hers with an intensity too heated to ignore. She could feel everything he had left unsaid swelling between them, a promise, a challenge, an undeniable need. As the last of their attackers fell, the warehouse echoed with tension and release. They were alive, yet on the brink of something more, the battle fading like a departing storm, leaving only them and the undeniable desire pooling in the space between. Breathless, she stepped closer, the warmth of him enveloping her. "You can't push me away forever, Ishmael." I wouldn't dream of it, he murmured, inching closer, the air thick with the promise of what lay ahead. A lingering moment hung between them, charged with possibilities as their hearts beat in sync. Scene 85, crossing the line. The rain drummed softly against the glass, a hesitant melody that echoed in the dimly lit office. Outside, the city glowed in the haze of neon lights, reflecting off puddles that shimmered like broken glass. Inside, the sterility of the detective agency felt almost suffocating, with stacks of paper strewn about the desk, remnants of cases long past. Tonja Coleman leaned back in her chair, her tall frame almost swallowed by the oversized leather seat. The tension in the air was palpable, a coiling spring waiting for release. In the corner, Enzo Arnau paced, his dark silhouette punctuated by the occasional flicker of streetlight filtering in through the window. The shadows of the room danced around him, mirroring the tumult of emotions churning inside both of them. You really think this is the right path? Tanja asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if even the walls might judge their decisions. Enzo paused, turning to face her, his piercing gaze unwavering. It's not about right or wrong anymore. It's about survival. His tone was firm, but his expression softened just enough to reveal the internal struggle. Survival? Tanja echoed, incredulity welling up within her. It felt like a slight against everything they stood for. We're supposed to fight for justice, our justice. This feels wrong. With the stakes this high, sometimes you have to bend the rules, Enzo replied, his voice steady, though a flicker of doubt flashed in his eyes. The truth lingered uncomfortably in the space between them. Or you risk losing everything. Silence enveloped them, stretching longer than either anticipated, until the patter of rain felt like a gasp for breath. Tanja's thoughts raced. She knew that the situation they were entangled in had blurred the lines she once held sacred. It threatened to unravel everything she believed in, yet she couldn't deny the raw ambition that surged within her. Stepping closer, Enzo's presence felt magnetic, drawing Tanja in. "What are you afraid of?" he asked, his voice low, almost intimate. "I'm afraid of becoming what I hate," she admitted, her gaze falling to the rain-streaked window, watching droplets race each other in their futile competition, an analogy of her own turmoil swirling in her mind, of losing myself in this fight. A deep breath escaped Enzo, charged with the electricity of their shared struggle. We're not losing ourselves. We're adapting. That's survival. Their eyes locked, and in that moment, every unsaid word, every hesitation hung heavily on the air. Tanja stepped back, absorbing his words. The world around them shrank until it was just the two of them in their shared reality. She had always admired his resolve, his ability to navigate the darkest corners with a cool head. But now, standing on the precipice of moral ambiguity, she felt the weight of their choices scraping against her conscience. "Is it worth it?" she whispered, vulnerability piercing through the walls she had meticulously constructed. "This compromise between who we are and what we must do, is it really worth it?" Enzo moved closer, an uncharacteristic flicker of uncertainty passing over his usually resolute features. "Tanja?" He reached out, letting a finger brush against her arm, sending a flicker of warmth through her. "Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith, even if it means risking everything." Her heart raced, pounding in her ears as she looked into his eyes. The connection, so electric, sparked a yearning deep within. She felt her defenses begin to slip as he leaned in, their shared tension palpable, the air thick with anticipation. He stopped mere inches from her, breath mingling in the space that felt charged with unspoken desires. Just then, the phone rang, slicing through the moment with an unrelenting urgency. The sound reverberated through the silence, drawing them back to reality with a jarring clarity. Tanja cursed under her breath, breaking eye contact, both relieved and frustrated. "Duty calls," she said, forcing herself to regain composure. But as she turned away to answer the phone, she caught a glimpse of Enzo's expression, part disappointment, part resignation. "Just remember," he said quietly, with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine, as if he were revealing a piece of himself she had yet to fully discover. "In the pursuit of justice, sometimes the line we cross defines who we become." Tanja nodded slowly, trying to digest his words as she reached for the phone, but felt the lingering heat of his gaze against her back. The storm outside raged on, both in the city and within her. It was a reminder that life didn't always offer clear answers, just choices, some more daunting than others. Scene 86, a tangled web. The relentless drizzle soaked the city in a glistening sheen, as if the concrete jungle had been polished for a grand affair, but now lay sullied by the tension in the air. Tonja Coleman leaned against the cool glass of her office window, the rhythmic patter of raindrops against the pane echoing the tempest within her. Outside, the streetlights flickered intermittently, casting long shadows that spiraled and recoiled with each gust of wind. Enzo Arnaud's presence behind her was palpable, a solid weight that offered warmth yet carried the sharp edge of unresolved discord. "Are you planning on letting me in on what you're thinking?" Enzo asked, his voice a low rumble. He stepped closer, the scent of his cologne mingling with the fresh rain, stirring memories of late-night stakeouts and whispered secrets. Tanja turned, her eyes narrowing as she considered the storm brewing between them. "If you list off another handful of conspiracy theories, I might just throw something at you," she replied, half joking, but the tension was unmistakable. A faint smile pulled at the corners of Enzo's mouth, but it faded quickly. "It's not a theory if it's true. The syndicate is tightening its grip, Tanja. How can you say that we're parallel in this? You've been holding back." "Because I can't trust," she started, but he cut her off. "You can't trust me?" Enzo's voice rose, heavy with disbelief. "I was fighting with you before you had those powers." He crossed his arms, the muscles in his forearms shifting, revealing a tension of his own. "And I was struggling with my past long before I met you," she shot back, the words spilling out like rainwater overflowing a gutter. The room felt smaller, constricting under the weight of her frustrations. Enzo clenched his jaw, but, for a moment, his gaze softened, a flicker of vulnerability crossing his features. The air between them thickened, vibrating with unacknowledged emotions. "You think I don't understand? I've been there." "Please, don't pretend like you know what it's like," she fired back, the sudden rage in her tone concrete and stark. The argument sat suspended between them, sharpened by the muted sounds of the city under the weight of the storm. But as quick as it erupted, a flash of honesty broke through, their hearts intertwining like the tangled branches of the trees outside. "I'm scared, Enzo," she whispered, the admission deflating the tension slightly. "It's hard enough to navigate this world without feeling like I can't lean on you." He stepped closer, the space between them taut with a charge. "Then let me in. I want to protect you, whether you want that or not. We're stronger together." Before she could respond, a blaring horn echoed outside, cutting through their fragile truce. "Ishmael's been calling," she said abruptly, her resolve hardening like the concrete streets below. "He wants to meet tonight to discuss the lead on Victor Sinclair." "Victor Sinclair? That creep from the underground?" Enzo's eyes brightened with both recognition and indignation. "You do realize that he has connections? This isn't just a casual tip-off." "I know that," Tanja snapped back, the frustration clawing at the edges of her composure. "But he's our best chance to untangle the syndicate's web. If we don't follow through, then we might as well throw ourselves into the eye of the storm with our hands tied behind our backs." Softening, Enzo took a step forward, brushing his fingertips against her arm, a connection that sent a ripple of warmth through her. "And what about us? What if we crash and burn trying to follow this lead?" As her heart quickened, Tanja caught his gaze, plunging deep into the well of emotions that swirled inside him. "The risk is worth it, but so are we, Enzo. I can't promise things will be easy, but—" Before she could finish, Enzo closed the distance, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her against him, their breath mingling in the charged air. It wasn't just any touch, it was an anchoring, a promise that they would navigate the murky waters ahead as partners until the last vestige of darkness was chased away. "Then let's choose to save each other," he murmured, his forehead resting against hers, their connection transcending words. "But for now, let's figure out Victor Sinclair." The rain drummed a relentless beat outside, yet within their embrace, a flicker of hope ignited, forging an unbreakable bond. Scene 87. Shades of Gray. The hum of the coffee shop mingled with the scent of rich espresso and freshly baked pastries, but inside Tonja Coleman's mind, chaos reigned. She sat alone at the corner table, fingers tapping restlessly against her phone, each beep echoing her rising frustration. The clatter of trays and laughter of patrons felt like a backdrop to her internal storm. She had intended this moment for quiet reflection, but instead, it morphed into a battleground of shifting loyalties and uncertain morals. Across the room, Rosie Santana entered, her vibrant presence slicing through the ambient noise. Tonja watched as Rosie's usual buoyant energy seemed dimmed today, her eyes flickering with something akin to worry. They shared a tight-knit bond, but today, even shoulder to shoulder, an invisible chasm lay between them. Rosie approached, her wavy hair bouncing, a brief splash of color against the gray slate walls. "Hey," Rosie said, sliding into the seat opposite Tonja. "You look like you're solving the world's problems over a latte." "A latte I didn't order," Tonja replied, taking a sip from the untouched cup, then grimacing as the bitter liquid coated her tongue. "It's like saying all's well in Narnia while there's a war brewing behind the wardrobe. Is that the mood we're in?" Rosie's eyes were bright but questioning, her forehead creasing as she leaned in closer. "Or is it just that guy?" She nodded toward the back of the shop, where Enzo Arnaud had settled at a table with his laptop open, fingers gliding over the keys in a steady rhythm. Tonja clenched her jaw, heat pooling in her stomach. "It's not just him." Rosie raised an eyebrow, her lips curling with mischief. "Oh, come on. You can't deny there's electricity when he's around. It's practically a current." "Electricity or a lightning storm?" Tonja countered, her voice low, eyes drifting back to Enzo. He was handsome, with an undeniable charisma that drew attention like moths to a flame. Yet the shadow behind his smile churned her stomach. "He's complicated," Rosie replied quietly, drawing Tonja's gaze. "But I'd have a hard time resisting that kind of trouble." A fleeting smile danced on Tonja's lips, but she quickly overshadowed it with a frown. "What if he's part of the storm?" "You've survived storms before," Rosie reminded her, leaning back, arms crossed defiantly, a challenge masked beneath a playful facade. "Why not this time?" And that's precisely the dilemma. Tonja felt her convictions unraveling, blurring with every stirring look shared across the room. All week, Enzo's presence had been like a drug, intoxicating yet dangerous. Her vision faltered, the recent case gnawing at her more than any demon. The shadows of their investigation loomed around their every interaction. Just then, a loud crash resonated from the table near the window, pulling both women from their reverie. A man in a tailored suit had toppled a stack of papers, frustration etching deep grooves in his forehead. The words of apology fell from his lips like rain against palm leaves, soft yet persistent. But it was the figure beside him, a woman with sharp features and a predatory gaze, that made the hairs on Tonja's neck stand erect. She recognized the glint in the woman's eyes. It mirrored the hunger of a lioness ready to pounce. "That's Luciana Hayes," Rosie hissed under her breath, her body suddenly taut with tension. "Criminal defense attorney, known for getting the worst off the hook." Tonja's eyes narrowed as she pushed her chair back and stood, her instincts flaring. "Then we need to hear what she has to say." Without missing a beat, Rosie grabbed Tonja's arm. "Wait, let's not make a scene." But even as she spoke, the potential for chaos unfurled in Tonja's mind like a flickering candle illuminating the dark corners of her thoughts. "A scene might be exactly what we need," she declared with a fierce determination. With that, Tonja strode toward the ruckus, her heart pounding not just with anticipation, but with the urge to confront the swirling shades of gray that had intruded upon her world of order. As she approached, the woman's laugh sliced through the air, as clear as bell chimes on a winter morning, innocently deceptive. "Oh, please, you think you know how this game is played?" Luciana taunted, smoothing down her blazer as her gaze darted to discern Tonja's approach. "How cute." Tonja's breath caught, her body anchoring at the intersection of resolve and inquiry. This was the essence of her job, to navigate the labyrinthine depths of right and wrong, one dangerous step at a time. And right now, facing the likes of Luciana, the lines were more blurred than ever. "Cute is not the word I'd use," Tonja replied, smirking as her intent solidified inside her. "More like reckless." Scene 88. Back to the beginning. Tonja Coleman leaned back in her chair, the smooth leather hugging her frame, as she flicked through old case files scattered across her desk. Each folder felt heavy with the past, echoes of voices reverberating in the silent room. A faint whiff of coffee lingered, cooling in her mug, forgotten in the pursuit of finding clarity amidst the chaos that swirled outside her office door. Her fingers traced the edge of a file labeled Operation Black Tide, a shadowy organization that had haunted the streets of Crescent City a year before. As she flipped it open, vivid memories cascaded through her mind like a film reel, the first time she had faced down the syndicate's goons, her heart racing as she deployed her instincts, and instincts alone. The sound of fists meeting flesh echoed in her ears, the metallic tang of adrenaline spiking her senses, sharpening each subsequent revelation. "Tonja?" A voice broke through the haze. Rosie Santana strode into the office, arms crossed, her tone mischievous. "You buried in those old stories again? Dating yourself doesn't count as a hobby, you know?" Tonja smirked without looking up, still absorbed by the case. "I'm trying to connect the dots. These files hold more than just closed cases. They're threads pulling at something alive in the now. I can feel it." Rosie rolled her eyes. "And yet, I can feel the tension in the air here too. You and Ishmael still dodging each other like pro boxers? Yikes." The playful jab squeezed at Tanja's chest. She slammed the file shut, staring at the polished surface of the oak desk. "He's complicated, Rosie. He's tied up in all this more than I realized. I can't let feelings distract me when people are in danger." "Sure, and yet you're letting him distract you, babe. More than the case." Rosie leaned in, brows narrowing. "Your powers are shifting. What happened that day in the warehouse was different. You were connected to him in ways you can't deny. Stop." The firm command snapped through the air, but the heat in Tanja's cheeks betrayed her resolve. She clicked her pen over and over, rhythmically pulsing with her anxiety. "Just saying," Rosie said with a shrug. "You're mighty fine at tackling bad guys head on, but when it comes to your feelings, girl, we both know you'd rather face a firing squad." Silence filled the space, unfolding like a heavy blanket that both soothed and stifled. Rosie's clever smile faded, leaving sincerity in its wake. "Look, it's not as easy as it seems." Tanja's voice softened, the weight of honesty imbued with years of fear and uncertainty. "Every time I get a glimpse of Ishmael, it's like my past collides with my present. The danger, this work, it's messy." Outside, laughter echoed as the sun set, casting a warm glow through the blinds. A group of officers bantered, the sounds accompanied by the vibrant sounds of Crescent City nightlife. The city pulsed with life, contrasting sharply with Tanja's internal struggle. She could almost feel the warmth of the electric air pulsing through her veins. Maybe it's time to take those feelings and put them to good use, huh? Rosie's playful nudges reactivated the lively spark in Tanja's dark eyes. "Have you thought about inviting him to dinner? Or does your psychic intuition deny you that avenue?" Just as Tanja felt the weight of Rosie's suggestion powerful, tempting yet terrifying, the office door swung open, interrupting the moment. Ishmael Devereaux stood at the threshold, rain-soaked, his chest heaving slightly as he caught his breath. His presence filled the room with an aura of intensity that ignited every unspoken tension. "Am I interrupting?" he asked, arching an eyebrow while letting the door close behind him. "Depends on what you're about to say," Tanja quipped, though the soft edges of her voice betrayed a nervousness hidden beneath their verbal sparring. His lips curled into a wry smile, but the glint in his eyes hinted at a deeper, unsteady current. "I have information. Big leads on Black Tide. Found something at the old site." "Another bloody chase?" Rosie interjected, her eyes flickering between the two. "How does he do this with that mysterious cloak of yours on full display?" Tanja waved Rosie off with an exasperated chuckle, each push and pull in the conversation sending heat coursing through her, leaving behind remnants of something more potent. "Let's hear it," Tanja said, leaning forward. As Ishmael stepped closer, the distance between them crackled with unspoken words, hearts racing as memories of their last confrontation hung in the air. The room was charged, and Tanja knew that the investigation was only the beginning. After all, sometimes revisiting old memories can lead to new paths. And with that, the door to conflict swung wide open once more, entwining their lives deeper amidst the chaos, the beginning echoing beyond their pasts. The thrill of a fresh pursuit loomed, stronger than any tension between them. Scene 89. The Riptide Effect. Evening light spilled through the jagged windows of the old warehouse, casting oblique shadows that danced like restless spirits. Dust motes floated in the warm hue, and the hint of salt from the nearby coast mingled with the scent of iron and machinery. It was here, in this cluttered sanctuary of forgotten industry, that Tonja Coleman found herself caught in the whirlwind of emotions, her heart pounding in time to the soft hum of activity around her. Can you believe the nerve? Just waltzing in here, Enzo Arnau remarked, running his fingers through his short, dark curls in agitation, the rich timbre of his voice vibrating against the echoing silence. His intense gaze swept the room, muscles taut beneath his fitted shirt, as they stood side by side, bodies close yet worlds apart. It's not a dance party, Enzo. Tanja shot back, tilting her chin with defiance, her long legs crossed in that distinctive model pose. It's a mess, a real riptide, and we're both stuck in it. The irony of their predicament wasn't lost on her. Each word felt like a taut string, vibrating with the unacknowledged heat simmering between them. The tension in the air thickened. Enzo stepped closer, closing the gap that Tanja had carefully maintained, the heat radiating from him like a wildfire on the edge of the forest. His piercing blue eyes locked on hers, searching, revealing a depth that both thrilled and terrified her. "Look, Tanja," he began, voice dropping to a conspiratorial murmur, "I didn't mean to push you earlier, but the stakes are high." "Everything feels high stakes lately," she replied tersely, crossing her arms, but the gesture felt more protective than defensive. A part of her craved his touch, the reassurance of his presence, while another part screamed caution. "You don't understand. This isn't just about us." In that moment, the room around them fell silent, the distant sounds of their colleagues fading into a hushed backdrop, allowing the tension between them to coil tighter. Enzo inhaled deeply, a familiar scent of cedar and hope mingling with the metallic tang of the warehouse. "No, but I want to," he affirmed, his voice steady as he reached toward her, fingertips brushing hers, electric and breathless. Just then, an unexpected crash reverberated through the space, and a group of their colleagues spilled in, a dynamic array of detectives and analysts engaged in animated discussions, completely oblivious to the underlying storm brewing between their leaders. "Did you see the way Meyer collapsed that suspect?" Rosie Santana, Tanja's fiercely loyal best friend, exclaimed, her laughter bright and unapologetic. "I swear, someone might have thought it was a wrestling match." Laughter rippled through the group before Laura Pierce chimed in. "You all should have seen my face. I thought I dropped my coffee for sure." Tanja felt a tug of annoyance as their moment unraveled, instinctively taking a step back, reestablishing the invisible wall. Yet Enzo remained close, watching the camaraderie unfold with a wry smile. The warmth of the room felt suffocating, and she couldn't help but feel exposed, torn between the laughter around her and the escalating current of attraction. "Hey, save some of that energy for tomorrow's briefing," Ishmael Devereaux interjected, his commanding presence cutting through the chaos like a knife. His darkly handsome features held an edge of mischief as he glanced at Tanja and Enzo, eyebrows raised knowingly. "You two are looking a little intense." Tanja's heart raced, the weight of Ishmael's teasing hitting her like a wave. Heat crept into her cheeks, and she flicked her gaze to Enzo, who rolled his eyes with a fond yet frustrated smirk. "Maybe we were just planning our next move," Enzo shot back, a glint of challenge in his eyes. "Or plotting ways to save you from your ego," Tanja retorted, attempting humor to deflect the electric intensity lingering in the room. Ishmael laughed, but Tanja could see the calculations running through his mind, as if this moment was part of a larger game. Silence fell again, the laughter dwindling as they all eyed each other with complexity and strained camaraderie. "Let's regroup," Ishmael finally said, gesturing for them to take seats, the commanding authority in his voice drawing everyone's attention. The underlying tensions were woven into their professional fabric, even as the group eroded the intimacy Tanja craved. The conversation shifted, but as Tanja settled into her chair, she could still feel Enzo's warmth beside her, the unsaid words hanging tantalizingly in the air. She had meant to be forthright, but now uncertainty clouded her thoughts. "What's our play now?" she asked, glancing sideways, brushing her fingers against his, an anchoring gesture that spoke volumes amidst the chatter. Enzo's gaze flicked to hers, piercing yet passionate, the barrier between them thinning. We'll figure it out, he murmured, their fingers lingering, breaking through the chaos with a touch that felt like both a promise and a challenge. Outside, a storm was brewing, but here, in this moment of hesitance wrapped in camaraderie, the questions of their connection drowned in the rising tide of emotion, a riptide that would test their resolve in the most unexpected ways. Scene 90. Adjusting dynamics. The rain poured over Charleston, a relentless cascade that hammered against the asphalt streets, pooling around the edges of nearby gutters. Outside the dimly lit precinct where danger mingled with coffee, Tonja Coleman leaned against a wall, arms crossed over her chest, her frame tall and imposing. The electric buzz of the fluorescent lights flickered intermittently, casting eerie shadows that accentuated the sharp angles of her face. Frustration curled in her gut like smoke, the air thick with tension and a scent of wet concrete that clung to the underside of her thoughts. Inside the precinct, a buzz of hushed voices carried her intellect through the haze. Her trusty partner, Enzo Arnaud, stood at the coffee station, dripping with charisma as he bantered with a newcomer, Malik Parker, whose youthful swagger was verging on insufferable. Tanja's lips tightened as she watched their easy camaraderie. While she appreciated their burgeoning friendship, it gnawed at her, threatening to unravel the delicate thread of her connection with Enzo. I swear, if he puts cream in his coffee one more time, she muttered under her breath, a smirk escaping her as she observed Malik's absurdly elaborate quest to create a perfect latte. Across the room, Ishmael Devereaux stepped into view, his presence like a dark cloud weaving through the chaos of the precinct. He offered a slight nod in her direction, an enigmatic smile playing on his lips that stirred something deep within her, a blend of intrigue and wariness. The weight of their unspoken history loomed in the air. Tanja's heart raced, threading through the memories of their past encounters, the charged moments seeking resolution. Still working alone, Coleman? Ishmael said, arching an eyebrow as if she were the only one to ever capture his interest. Not alone anymore, she replied, injecting coolness into her tone. Enzo's working on a case with Malik. She resisted the urge to glance back at them, aware that Ishmael's gaze was fixed on her, dissecting every flicker of uncertainty in her expression. I see where this is heading, he mused, stepping closer, his voice a low murmur that sent a delightful shiver down her spine. Adding a bit of chaos to the team, huh? Chaos? Are you kidding? I think some of us prefer order. She leaned in slightly, a playful spark igniting between them. Off to the side, Enzo, with his wavy dark hair and warm smile, momentarily looked up, catching their exchange with a curious expression that held more implications than she cared to analyze. Rosie Santana, ever the practical optimist, ambled over, her vibrant attitude cutting through the tension. What are you two conspiring about? An evil scheme to steal coffee from Malik? Something like that, Ishmael chimed in, and there was laughter, a warm, inviting sound that broke through their careful facades. Rosie put her hands on her hips and smiled knowingly. Just be sure to share the spoils. Those kitchen experiments are questionable at best. Definitely not my finest work, Malik called from the other side, feigning offense as he executed a particularly pompous flourish while stirring his drink. As the group laughed, Tonja took a step closer to Ishmael, the sensation between them sizzling like electricity. Their past felt closer than ever, binding their fates in a way that flickered beneath their skin. She heard the steady pulse of her heartbeat, matching the intensity in his gaze. I made a choice to work with others, Ishmael, she said, her tone low and earnest, feeling the weight of her words as they lingered between them. Trust is difficult for me. I never wanted you to trust me blindly, he replied, vulnerability wrapping around his words as he lowered his gaze for just a moment, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath his guarded exterior. But sometimes there's strength in reliance. Enzo chose that moment to strut back toward them, putting an arm around Tanja's shoulder with effortless familiarity. Hey, don't leave me out of this heart-to-heart. What are we strategizing over? A game of rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets Malik's famed coffee? More like hoping he never tries again, Tonja shot back, smiling at Enzo, despite the turbulence swirling beneath her calm exterior. As laughter erupted among the group, she caught Ishmael's eyes, fleeting and intense, before he stepped back into the shadows, leaving her breathless. In that fragile moment of camaraderie, something shifted. The dynamics were reshaping. Alliances formed under the pressure of the looming investigation, and she couldn't help but feel drawn into the unexpected complexity of it all. Want to join us for round two, Ishmael? Enzo called out, a challenge implicit in his tone. Maybe next time, Ishmael replied evenly, casting one last penetrating glance in Tonja's direction, a message wrapped within layers of hidden meaning. Their worlds were expanding, disassembling the barriers that had existed between them, and with that, the realization of the forces at play sent a tremor through her. In the whirlwind of love, trust, and danger, where their lines might blur dangerously, Tonja faced the storm, ignited by an undeniable allure that drew her closer to the edge. Next time, she echoed quietly, knowing very well it wouldn't be easy, nothing ever was, yet it felt as if fate had a plan that was just beginning to unfold. Scene 91. Waves of Emotion. The murmur of passing traffic seeped through the windows of Tonja Coleman's office, mixing with the faint scent of jasmine from a half-empty teacup perched precariously on her desk. Tonja leaned back in her chair, her fingers drumming against the sleek mahogany surface, a well-practiced dance of impatience. The dim light from the desk lamp cast shadows on her face, emphasizing the tension in her brow. Ishmael, what were you thinking? Tonja's voice was steady, but low, simmering beneath the surface. Her eyes narrowed, searching Ishmael Devereaux for a flicker of a truth he had yet to share. Ishmael stood by the door, arms crossed over his broad chest, an immovable wall of intensity. The flickering glow from the streetlights outside threw stripes of shadow across his features, highlighting the pulse of the unspoken between them. I thought you could handle yourself, he replied, his voice smooth but laced with a hint of defiance. Tonja's jaw clenched. She pushed herself up, deliberately closing the gap between them, her long limbs moving with a grace that belied the tension in her core. You put me in danger, Ishmael, just like before. The accusation hung between them, raw and potent. His eyes darkened slightly, not due to anger, but a guarded sorrow. You don't think I want to protect you? The question lingered, causing the air to thicken with an overwhelming intensity. Suddenly the door swung open, and Enzo Arnaud charged in, a whirlwind of energy. Did I miss the fireworks? I brought snacks. He brandished a plastic bag, his charm radiating with an infectious warmth. He glanced at Tonja, whose fierce expression softened just a fraction. Oh, we're in the middle of a love quarrel, aren't we? Ishmael cut him a warning look, tension flickering back into his body. This was a private discussion. Yeah, well, private and talk tend to be like oil and water around here, Enzo quipped, plopping down on the couch and rummaging through the bag. Besides, I'm here to lighten the mood. He pulled out a container of homemade cookies. Sugar overload, anyone? Tonja couldn't help a small smile. The mischief in Enzo's eyes was a balm against the rising tension. You do realize not everything can be fixed with snacks, right? Sure it can, he grinned, one eyebrow raised. Especially when the world feels like it's on fire. He gestured dramatically, somehow managing to spill crumbs. Eat a cookie, calm down. Ishmael's probably just trying to be a brooding hero again. Tonja shot Ishmael a sidelong glance, and he rolled his eyes, though the corners of his lips quirked up in amusement. The air shifted slightly, a brief undulation like the calm before a storm. Look, Ishmael began, his tone more measured now, a rare glimpse of vulnerability creeping in. I never intended for you to feel cornered. She cut him off, her voice rising. You just keep putting me in these situations. I don't need you playing savior. I need a partner. Partners sometimes make decisions that may not align, Ishmael argued, stepping closer, the warmth radiating off him. You don't always have access to the whole picture. Zinging across the space, the tension jolted like electricity, both of them unwittingly leaning toward one another, the air thick with unvoiced feelings. Enzo ambled closer, concern flaring in his bright eyes. Tonja, you okay? Want to throw Ishmael out for a bit? He punctuated with a jesting elbow to Ishmael's side, lightening the mood, though the underlying tension remained. No, I want. Tonja hesitated, her usual fortitude faltering just slightly as her heart raced. I want clarity. We're wading into mud, Ishmael. I can feel it. Ishmael drew in a breath as if wrestling with his own cascading thoughts. Then let's clear the mud, now. His voice softened, a mix of frustration and earnestness ripping through the air. Tanja's heart quickened as they stood toe-to-toe, the space between them weighted with the energy of unsaid things. A moment stretched, unyielding, softness beckoning within the heat of their shared resolve. Before she could register the impulse, she reached out and touched his arm. The warmth of his skin against hers sent ripples through her, igniting a thread of their chemistry that had simmered too long beneath the surface. Ishmael's breath hitched, his gaze locked on hers, seeking. This is uncharted," she whispered, her pulse sinking with the urgency of the moment. "But maybe we can navigate it together." The dare hovered between them as Enzo retreated into silence, sensing the shift. "I'd like that," Ishmael finally murmured, the barriers cracking like glass, allowing something raw and profound to weave through the chaos. Scene 92, Uncharted Territory. The scent of gunmetal and burnt rubber lingered in the bustling streets of downtown Richmond, where dim streetlights flickered overhead like wary sentinels. Tonja Coleman stood at the edge of the bustling crowd, her mind racing. Her heightened senses were alive, each heartbeat echoing with the realization of the dangerous web she found herself in. She could feel the weight of unseen eyes on her, shadows lurking beneath every corner. She tightened her grip on the evidence bag nestled in her palm, the material crinkling softly against her skin. Just moments before, she had been piecing together a puzzle that tied back to Ishmael Devereaux, a connection that was growing increasingly complex, much like her emotions about him. A quiet determination ignited within her. Secrets whispered through the layers of their pasts, and she was determined to unravel every thread. "Hey, detective, got something good?" Rosie Santana approached, juggling 2 steaming cups of coffee, steam dancing like whispers between them. Her eyes sparkled mischievously as she handed one to Tonja. "Depends on how you define good," Tonja said, her words laced with tension as she took a sip. The rich flavor jolted her senses, a momentary distraction from the revelation lurking beneath the surface. "You look like you just tasted something sour," Rosie remarked, the smile on her face teasing but softening when she noted Tonja's serious demeanor. "I feel like I just entered uncharted territory," Tonja admitted, tossing a glance over her shoulder as if expecting Ishmael to materialize from the shadows. "There's more to this case than we initially thought. It leads back to him." Rosie raised an eyebrow, adjusting the strap of her bag. "You mean the mysterious mastermind? You're getting in deeper, aren't you?" Before Tonja could respond, a roar of laughter erupted from the opposite side of the street, where a street performer had captured the attention of a growing crowd. The performer, clad in vibrant colors, juggled flaming torches with an ease that sparked delight. In reflections of the flickering flames, Tonja could feel the heat of vulnerability creeping back to the surface. "I almost wish I could juggle my secrets like that," she said, half laughing. But then, who would catch the fallout? Rosie's expression shifted to a knowing glance, urging Tonja to share more. "What's holding you back? If something is there with Ishmael, you should explore it. Maybe he's not the enemy you think he is." The suggestion hung in the air, heavy yet tantalizing. Just then, Ishmael appeared, the night twisting around him like a cloak. His presence had a way of silencing the world around him. Tonja felt a swell of emotions drill into her, a confusing mixture of wariness and a magnetic pull towards him. "Tonja," he began, voice low and steady, "I need to show you something." His eyes darted to Rosie, then back to Tonja, his serious demeanor intensifying the air between them. "What is it?" Tonja asked, heart racing as she stepped closer, a subtle dance of proximity. "Meet me at the old station. 10 minutes," he replied, tension woven into his tone. With that, he turned sharply and melted into the crowd, leaving behind an energetic void that buzzed with unresolved questions. "I guess you're off to your rendezvous," Rosie chimed, but her playful smirk didn't mask the concern in her gaze. "It's not a date," Tonja replied defensively, her tone failing to convince even herself. But deep down, a thrill ignited within her, a feeling she had buried beneath layers of resilience. "Just remember to keep your guard up," Rosie said, a hint of warning laced in her words. Tonja nodded, but before she could step away, her phone buzzed, cutting sharply through the ambient noise. A psychic flash surged through her, the sensation of cold fingers wrapping tight around her lungs, a figure lurking in her vision, blurred yet familiar. She raised a hand to Rosie, catching the innocuous conversation of a bickering couple nearby as she steadied herself. "Listen," she whispered. "I have to figure this out. I won't let it consume me." "Just promise me you won't do anything reckless," Rosie insisted, her voice threading urgency into the moment. "I won't," Tonja promised, but her heart pounded with the thrill of impending danger as she stepped away, the world around her blending into a soft hum of anticipation. As she moved towards the old station, determination surged within her. Whatever Ishmael had to reveal, it would be a turning point. She took a breath, navigating through the thrumming city as the night pulsed with uncharted territory, mystery waiting to unfold. "I'm coming for you, Ishmael," she murmured under her breath, a hopeful yet defiant declaration echoing in her mind. The thrill of the chase tingled down her spine, propelling her forward into the intoxicating unknown. Scene 93. The hunter becomes the hunted. Tonja Coleman stood on the cracked pavement of abandoned warehouses in the industrial district, the air thick with the scent of rust and mildew. The moon hung low, casting silver streaks through the jagged silhouettes of the crumbling buildings. She rummaged through the dark blue duffel bag by her feet, her fingers brushing against the cold metal of her gear as she prepared for yet another night filled with questions that begged answers. Unzo Arnaud leaned against a nearby wall, his arms crossed, watching Tonja with an intensity that stirred something deep within her. He shifted, the soft scrape of his shoes against the gritty ground, creating a discordant melody of anticipation. There was an unspoken bond woven between them, forged in shared danger and lingering glances that often lingered longer than necessary. "Are you sure about this?" Enzo asked, his voice low, edged with concern. Tonja met his gaze, her heart racing. "We've been through worse. We need to follow this lead. It could point to the syndicate's next move." The tension in her shoulders eased just slightly, but the pressure in her chest remained.